Welcome to MQC, the Massachusetts Quadball Chat for off-pitch chats with Carsen and Sierra.
Yeah, we're going to start off with a recap of this past weekend, which was our D2 Championship Bowl. Our first series was between Tufts and Middlebury, where Tufts scored 80 and Middlebury won with 150. And then game two was Tufts with 95 to Middlebury's 170.
Yeah, I think with these games, Middlebury took the win, and it wasn't, I'd say, like close games when you get to the final score. But I think Tufts looked the best that they have all season. I think a lot of the games were a lot closer come 20 minutes than they ended up being at the end. Beckett Bergerman was the only flag catch of this two-game series. And looked a lot more confident in the chasing game as well, just like taking space to open up goals for the rest of the team as well. Tufts actually took like a 3-0 lead to start game one. And so I think there's just a lot more cohesion. I think a lot of that was led by kind of a two-man game of Brandon. I'm going to butcher the last name, but Dionisio, I think is what we came up with. And Cam Morrow. They played really well together, looking to get more goals on the board. Cam Morrow always looking for like a shot on an uncontested top hoop a lot. Wasn't really falling his way kind of to start, I think, game two. And then he found his rhythm and it looked a lot better. And then Dionisio playing behind did a really good job taking space, making aggressive cuts and stuff just to get open and kind of sauce defenders. So I think they looked pretty good. I think both are also like relatively young players. So, I think for Tufts this season, it's a lot of just like getting into the swing of things. Yeah, definitely a bit of a build-up kind of year. Emily Rahman as well at the beating position. She looked a lot more confident this weekend as opposed to some of the other games that they've played in the spring. Looking at like taking trades, making more aggressive plays on offense to give the Chasers more to work with. And so I think that was really good to see and definitely helped them kind of create a little more on the offense and get some really good stops.
Yeah, I think Tufts, like the score kind of doesn't look close, but I think Tufts showed a lot more hustle than Middlebury did. And I think that was kind of maybe coming from like a sense of urgency that maybe Middlebury didn't have, conserving energy for what they knew was probably likely going to be a really long day for them. I think Jason Wu was, doing his thing. He was primarily supported by like this newcomer, but also returner, Josh Glucksman, who played, and they played mostly like a two-person game throughout this series. And it kind of sustained Middlebury's lead once they found some chemistry.
Yeah, a lot of what they're looking for was just kind of Wu driving in, passing to Glucksman, who is just a lot taller than some of the hoops defenders Tufts had, was able to just kind of put it in for some easy goals there. Yeah, I think, now let's talk about Middlebury took it in two games, which was probably good for them since, to your point, they had to then go into playing Emerson. So these games, it did go to a 3-game series. Game one went Emerson's way with a score of 70 to 125. Middlebury bouncing back to take game two with a score of 120 over Emerson's 115. And then Emerson clinched the promotion to D1 next year with a game three with the final score of 50 Middlebury to 120 Emerson. I think kind of to the point of, Middlebury conserved energy in like the first series of the day. I think that while true, I think, kind of rocking with a 9-person roster again, I think really wears down on the team. They only had, I think, a 40-minute break from game two to game three. So their first series against Tufts into having to play Emerson. And I know in game one, it was tied at intermission with 60-60. So Middlebury only able to put one more point on the board, but I do think a catch for Emerson kind of allowed them to like really build momentum and then just gain some energy and kind of take it. It was a pretty similar game or story in game two. It was close. I think every game at intermission was at 60 points for the winning or the top scoring team. I think game two it was 60-60 for both of them. Emerson got into a bit of car trouble in games 2 and 3. One of their top scorers, Amir Rivera Salah, had 8 yellow cards across 3 games, which, if you do the math, went to 2 red cards in game 2 and 3. And I definitely think in game 2, once that red card came out, a lot of the momentum kind of died. I think Middlebury had a little burst of energy there once they had Amiri at that point, I think, was in the chasing game. So a red card just kind of, let them
Mm-hmm.
build nonstop momentum. Always going against a three-person defense is definitely, good to get points on the board. So I definitely think that hurt them. They were still, as a team, luckily able to come out with the win, but I definitely think that kind of hurt some of the momentum they had.
Yeah, and it's like such a bummer too that Amiri's picking up these cards because they are such a talented player. And if they can just play cleanly, they can make such a huge difference for their team. And I hope that by the time Cup rolls around, we aren't seeing these kinds of contact cards, just to like keep them in the game for the sake of the team and the betterment of the team.
Yeah.
But some other players this weekend that I think had really great standouts. I think Peyton Schwiebert pulled really heavy minutes this weekend.
Mm-hmm.
There were very few times when Peyton was off the field and was making just huge like cleanup plays, like absolutely just blowing it up on offense, creating incredible turnovers on defense, and also just like off the field, like kept the team's energy in the right space when things like were going maybe a little awry, especially when these cards kept popping up. Ryan Leary, always electric to watch, taking on multiple defenders at a
Mm-hmm.
time to open up shots, and also was doing great at reading passes, reading shots, and intercepting those. I think Daniel Baradat kept the team like really traveling at a high pace throughout the day, especially to start off games. And he had some like really key stops on defense. And then Lila Williams, I think, has the most sound fundamentals of the entire Emerson chasing core. I think when she gets the ball, which I think can her usage should be increasing, um, she has the most on target passes and shots. I think she's getting them in the right spaces. I just hope her team can figure out how to use her more because she is going to be such a great asset going forward.
Yeah, I think one thing about Lila that's kind of fun to watch is I feel like she's like very calm in like a way that like it seems like she's playing slow, but it's not. It's just not like it's never like I feel like it's just like it's always calm
It's like
movement. Yeah,
graceful.
it's very graceful in the way she plays. And there was one where like I think Middlebury like looks to like get one up, the like woo to Glucksman just like over the top of a shorter defender, and she just like it wasn't slow by any means, but she just reaches a hand up and
Just
tips it.
casual.
Yeah, and so it goes over Glucksman, and then Emerson's beaters are like able to get there and get a stop. And so yeah, it was just a lot of like I feel like small, really good plays that like had a lot of impact for like
Mm-hmm.
how kind of like small that they were.
Mm-hmm.
I think one other person who I think kind of deserves a shout out is Adrian Manansala. I think don't want to take anything away from Peyton. I think a lot of like his minutes were when Emerson was going on these runs, but I think Adrian Manansala was able to come in and be such like a steady presence in the game where it was like, okay, Peyton's off the field, but you're getting like equal footing here. It was never like a huge dip in quality or anything like that. And so I think he provided a really stable presence for Emerson in those minutes when Schreiber wasn't necessarily on the field and going.
Mm-hmm.
Which brings us to Middlebury. I think overall, like we've said, they had to play 5 games this weekend. I think that's going to wear on you, especially on a team that has less players. I also think one thing that sort of hurt them a little bit was I think Jason Wu had some shot trouble this weekend compared to how he's been looking in the past. A bit of a bigger struggle also distributing the ball. Um, that's not to discount him in any way. I think he still had like the most goals for his team, but I don't think he looked like as in control of the game
Mm-hmm.
as he has against other teams. I definitely think Emerson for Middlebury is a team where it's like they're a lot closer matched than some of the teams Middlebury's played this year, where they're like either a lot better than or just like don't have as much experience as.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think Emerson is like probably a bit of a weird team for them, where like they are just in a more even space, and it can be a little. I feel awkward, especially as like a freshman kind of like star like ball carrier player, to have to take that step and figure it out on the fly. And so I think it was just a bit of an adjustment. I think he definitely looked better in game 2, but I think unfortunately by game 3, it just, some wear and tear probably got the better of him there.
Yeah, I think if like Jason wasn't like his shots weren't falling, but I also don't know if he was taking the right shots. There was a lot of times, especially towards the end of the day, tired legs, things like that. It's like, oh, a quick like move back and forth, and then we're shooting into traffic, or we're shooting over the hoops and it's going out of bounds. Like miscommunications with I think Josh, especially behind hoops, and that kind of just led to like offensive opportunities that weren't taken at the right times.
Yeah, I just think like what had worked for them in the top series right before, like the Wuda Glucksman kind of just like quick pass put in. I think Emerson was a little bit more prepared for it, and so it wasn't working as much. And then I think, you know, having to figure out offense on the fly in a game is always going to be tough, especially at the college level where people are a little less experienced. You know, Jason, first season, Glucksman, I think maybe second set of games
Ish.
ever, kind of like a third, fourth year. I don't know. I think he played when you were still in college, but like very briefly. And so, yeah, I think, you know, they tried to switch it where Glucksman was in front and Wu was behind. And I think Glucksman just had a bit of like too many turnovers, running into some contact. Emerson, you know, definitely playing really good defense there.
Wait, yeah, no, this Emerson team, most of this Emerson team has played Josh before, so he wasn't like a new.
Yeah, they were ready
phenom
for
for
him.
him.
Yeah. But I do think Middlebury, you know, if they're able to distribute more to some of the other players, I think they'll start to see a lot of rewards from that. Sadie Sadler this weekend, I think, looked a lot more confident. I think there were at least like 3 different times where she either took a shot or took a lot of space and just like kind of walked it in. I think there was one against Emerson where I think she like wanted the ball on an inbound or something, and I may just be like making this up about like how she felt, but this is how I felt she felt. And like she seemed like upset that she didn't get the ball. Yeah. So then one time she got the ball behind hoops and she literally just like ran it in and like pushed it through like 3 defenders and stuff. And so it's really good to see like that confidence and just like comfortability taking space. I think I've said this before, but like I feel like when there's only 9 people on your team, like you got to get up to speed pretty quick. And I think she's doing a really good job of just like building her confidence and like just looking like she's wanting to do more. I do think, you know, I think I've said this like so many times today already. Middlebury just looked slower in these later games.
5 games is a lot for any team, and
yeah,
especially for a team of maybe 9 people.
Yeah, and so, you know, I think given the unfortunate circumstances, you know, Emerson wasn't even able to like get slowed down by earlier games in the day either. So yeah, Emerson is going to get promoted in the next USQ season up to D1. Um, yeah, and so I think that's kind of it in terms of, you know, performances from this weekend. But looking ahead, there's going to be kind of the final round of games for D1. So the relegation bowl is going to be happening Sunday, April 21st. It'll be between BU and Brown. Looking to see who is going to get relegated. That's
demoted.
Demoted, either one, pushed down. But yeah, to see who goes to D2. I think for Brown, that would be or return to D2. They were there previously, but for BU, if that happened, this would, I think, be the first time in MQC history. I think it's not a particularly long history of the D1 and D2, but it would be the first time that BU is in D2. So a lot of, you know, probably pride on the line for them. But we're not going to do a full preview until post Cup, since it's going to be, I think, the weekend right after.
Yes.
Right? Yes.
So no games this weekend as these teams start to prepare for Cup. So we'll catch you after Nationals with a preview of the D1 relegation bowls, and we will see you in Texas.